Is football suffering from Leicester City's success last season? Has their style of play offered an example that led to what many thought was a Euro 2016 focused around defence over attack? Or is it just sour grapes because the gap has narrowed between the best and the rest? That's the question that we discuss and you decide. Battling out this week is Chris from Eurofootball Daily and our very own Gareth Flavel, aka Flav. Sinead, deal with it. You're going to have 2 votes to decide who's right on this one. One after the opening statements and then one at the end of the show after the closing statements using the poll cards. Let's get straight into it, guys. Flav, you can go first, mate.
All right.
Give them your opening statement. Off you go.
Ultimately, football is about glory. And let me make this straight. This isn't about sour grapes. I'm not bitter. I am very bitter that Leicester have won the league over Spurs. But ultimately, look at the style in which they did it. Football's about entertainment. We go to the games to be enthralled and mesmerised by what people can do on the pitch. And what ultimately Leicester have done, what Atletico Madrid have done, and what Portugal did to a certain extent is play a functional brand of football which isn't entertaining to watch. So if you take the romanticism out of Leicester's achievements, what you've got is a pretty boring brand of football. And that's fine. A one-off, that's fine. But do we want to see football become that forever or for the foreseeable future? In my opinion, as a fan of the beautiful game, let's leave it that, beautiful.
Nice, Flav. Very good. Better than I was expecting, I'll be honest. Right, Chris. Off you go, mate.
Well, mate, some people are scared of change and some people embrace it. Since the formation of the Premier League in 1992, only 5 other teams, barring Leicester, have won it. Does that sound healthy in terms of competition? This could give other teams the licence to get over their inferiority complex of the top 4 and really, let's make it a more competitive Premier League. In terms of being entertained, Flav, I'm not sure if what you were watching last season. Did you not see Riyad Mahrez? Did you not see Jamie Vardy? A combined 60 goals. Leicester only didn't score in 3 of their games and had a plus 32 goal difference. So for me, it was functional. It was Ranieri making the best of what he had, and ultimately a team that were greater than the sum of their parts. And I doff my cap to him.
Very good. Right, so there you go. That's the opening statement. So after those 2 opening statements, let us know via the poll cards who you think has won it so far. But let's get into it now. So, Flav, you used the word mesmerised. But Leicester City, the best they'd done prior to that, 1927 or something, finishing 2nd. Surely that is mesmerising.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And this isn't about Leicester. It's not about Leicester. It's about the type of football they play. And the type of way, it's a system that's been created by very good managers, Ranieri, Simeone, who have understood that to compete against the biggest, most expensive teams, you have to play that way. And it's been successful, and they've done it, and that's great. But what does that say for where football's going? That's the issue. It's not about Leicester. I understand the fairy tale it was incredible. It's painful for me, but I can see the glory in what happened there. But if that's the way you have to win the league or achieve success, then what will football become in the next 6 or 7 years? And going back to something we talked about off camera, tick-tacker, I'm not talking about that either. Possession football, it isn't about possession football. It's about entertaining. The game is about entertaining. The whole reason we pay so much money is to watch players do things that the mere mortal can't. And that might be Mahrez, and that might be Vardy. But I think that Mahrez and Vardy played in a very functional system that suited their game perfectly, rather than it being about flair and flamboyance.
Do you think it's a kind of like back in the day there were teams that if they couldn't compete on the deck, then they'd play it long and have a massive guy up front and try and deal with another team that way? Is this the new blueprint for that, where you're defensive, you're compact, and then you have incredible pace on the break? Is that a blueprint that is a dangerous thing for football?
I'd say attributing just that single tactic to Leicester will be doing them a disservice. I mean, let's talk about what came before. I've just said only 5 of the teams, one of those was Manchester City, who bought the league, have won the league prior to Leicester winning it this season. So you have that hegemony, you have that lack of competition. I can't understand how people don't see this as a force for positive change. And we talk.
Can you not see that as a Spurs fan who wants to get into? There's always been the Big Four. The Big Four disappeared last year.
Yeah.
There were more surprises last year than we'd ever seen before. Surely that's a good thing.
Of course, it's a good thing. I'm a proponent for change.
Cheers, Flav. So,
I'm a proponent for change.
We'll
Spurs finished, you remember Spurs finished second. We're not one of the big four. We nearly won the league playing the brand of football I like to see, right? But forget Tottenham and forget Leicester for a second, right? A change is great, right? But not negative change. Leicester can go out and attract a manager that will win them a league in a positive style rather than what we saw last season. Don't make this about Leicester and Tottenham because people are going to be voting on that, and everyone's going to vote Leicester because they're that lovely little soft club that everyone likes.
He smashed the league last year.
He smashed the league last year and smashed Tottenham.
So it's the point that Flav's
points.
making is it's about negativity.
Yeah,
So,
it's about the negative.
Well,
brand
negative
of
tax. I think was just Leicester being savvy. Listen, with this, moving forward, they might play a different brand of football, with additional players now that they are, capable of bringing in a higher calibre of player. But you can't criticise Leicester and Ranieri for making the most of what they had, being, very efficient, getting the best out of getting Vardy and Mahrez, and ultimately, if we're going to talk about possession football, let's look at Manchester United, for example. Leicester did win the league with 44%, lower than anyone else, but Manchester United had 55% possession, the second highest out of every team in the Premier League. And what did they do? They didn't score for, in 10 home games in the first half, at Old Trafford this season. So let's not get hung up on possession. Let's not overly apply one tactic to Leicester. And let's see this. I can only see it as a positive force for change. And, come on, welcome to Champions League to Saffron Lane next season.
Very nice. We asked you guys what you thought, if you thought Leicester's success has led to a sort of worse game. 74% said no. Maybe that's probably because the word Leicester in there and people love that story of it.
Yeah.
Of course. Moving on to the Euros, because I think that's part of the argument as well, is that blueprint that we were talking about of not needing the ball. And you say it's not about possession, but a little bit of it is about possession, because if you're going to dominate a game, generally you're going to have the ball more. And three of the 4 teams with the most possession, you would expect them to be dominating games, which means they've probably got better players, which probably means they're better teams. Yet only one of those teams, Germany, were able to make it even into the semi-finals. No one even made it to the finals. So was Euro 2016 then the next stage of that style of play? Not with the quality that you've got in Mahrez and Vardy and those people, but an ability to survive still got a lot of teams pretty far.
So it was great to see Northern Ireland, Iceland get through to the knockout stages. And to be fair, there was some romance in the fact that Portugal got to the final. But is that what you want to see from European Championship football for the next 10 Euros? If that's the way you win, if that's what success looks like, do we want to see a repeat of the most boring international competition in the history of football? And ultimately, that's what we got from teams that are playing within their ability, and they have the right to do that. But it is damaging for what we consider to be an entertainment sport.
Do you think that's fair?
Well, I don't think there's any arguing that the brand of football on display at the Euros was, lethargic. It was a little bit dull at times, but I think it was indicative of the fact that there was a lack of top-class strikers at the tournament, or top-class strikers performing to within that bracket. And hey, these teams that are up against it, those performing to, as you say, being nice and narrow, being nice and tight, it's not a new concept.
Yeah.
And this possession-based football that we think is correlates into results is not the case, as we saw with, as you said, alluded to what you said, the end of tiki-taka and Barca being smashed 7-0 by Bayern. So I think, c'est la vie, let teams play their own brand of football, and it's up to them to unpick one another.
And I guess the other side of it is that there was a lot of tight games that went into the last 10 minutes, and it was close with teams that you didn't expect, Iceland, to be winning those games, or Ireland in those last minute wins against Italy. So that's exciting. If we're worried about entertainment, then that's exciting, surely.
Yeah, the kind of the gimmick of it's exciting. The fact that Iceland beat England is exciting for everyone else other than Englishmen. But ultimately, what you're going to get in the long run is the quality will out, but it will be low scoring. It will be a constant plod against the defensive unit.
That's the worry, is that it's the quality gets squeezed out of the
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Is that what you're concerned?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that the transfer market will move towards much more powerful and functional players, and that flair players will be less desirable, less useful in the game.
We saw that in the final, didn't we?
Yeah.
If you think of Matuidi, Pogba in a defensive role, Renato Sanchez, all players who did well. They're all great players, but players like Moutinho was on the bench, Coman on the bench, so that kind of flair and finesse was getting pushed out a little bit.
I mean, that was strange game management from Deschamps. You know, not unleashing Pogba, not bringing Kante on and unleashing Pogba as we saw in the game before. But I mean, what I will say is that, you know, there are teams that changed their ethos, like Italy, and then they all of a sudden came to the forefront. So there's a fluidity between changing your style of play, and I think it was very dependent on manager at this tournament, and a little bit of fatigue, if anything, from the top players such as Harry Kane.
Do you think that with the final, Portugal will be seen as a team that didn't deserve it because they hadn't won, one game in 90 minutes throughout the tournament?
Yeah.
But did they deserve to be in that bracket of Greece in 2004 or Denmark in 1992?
I mean, to put them in there with Greece is probably to do Greece a disservice because, as you say, they were rated higher than England before the tournament started. And I think people expected them to sort of peter out at the quarterfinals. But what we saw was some savage defending from Pepe. And Nani actually led the line really well when Ronaldo was being, you know, particularly dysfunctional when he was dipping in and out of games, having to trap back. So I just think, there was more emphasis on team play than individual starring. And you can say that's a detriment to the game. But as a whole, if it means, you know, people are less dependent on superstars, then so be it.
Yeah. So I think that's a good time to do our closing statements. I think we've spoken about it all. I'll tell you what, one last stat. 20 years ago, 1996, that was the last time there were less goals than in this tournament. And for a lot of people, that's a tournament that people hold very dear to them. So this is a really difficult question. So I'm intrigued to see who you're going to vote for.
A lot less teams, though.
A lot less teams. But yeah, still average goals. So this is a tricky one, but the boys are going to do one last closing statement, then you get your second and final vote. Flav, you went first last time. Chris?
So, I think Leicester winning the league can only be a good thing. They've broken up the hegemony, the Premiership. As I say, only 5 other teams barring themselves won it since then, and you have the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea buying the league. If not buying the league and developing players like Danny Drinkwater, making heroes of people like Wes Morgan is the way forward, then so be it. As for the Euros, I think we saw a national stage in transition there. Look at Italy, they came out and they played the most attacking football of the tournament, well, some of it, and it was a delight to see. I think in terms of the tactics, it was mainly a lack of reliance on top strikers not performing that let the tournament down.
Okay, very good. Lead that, Flav.
Ultimately, this is an argument about romanticism. Everybody understands what Leicester did and how great it was with a limited bunch of players. I think you'd even admit that. The fact is, though, it's bad for football. Ultimately, because the game is about glory. It's about doing things with style and with a flourish. It's about going out and beating the other lot, not waiting for them to die of boredom. Danny Blanchflower said that, and he was a great, great man. I think what we're going to see next season is teams sitting back on Leicester and not allowing them to break, forcing them to play, and there'll be plenty of stalemates, which would ultimately goes back to my very first point, that it damages football. This is an entertainment's business, and I want to be entertained, especially because I'm paying so much bloody money.
Fair point. Very good. So the boys have made their points, but it's you who decide right now by making your final vote here. To watch more episodes of You Decide, including Wenger versus Mourinho and Ronaldo versus Bale, click right here. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and most of all, go and subscribe to Ball Street. Do it. Do it now. I'm happy to wait. I will wait.